As the clock struck midnight, the old mansion on the outskirts of town came alive with eerie creaks and groans. It was said that this mansion was cursed and had been abandoned for years. But tonight strange things were happening within its walls. A group of friends, including Kate, John, Rachel, and Mark, had decided to explore the mansion. They had heard stories of the supernatural occurrences that had taken place inside and wanted to experience them firsthand. As they entered the mansion, they noticed that the air was thick with an ominous energy. The doors creaked loudly, and the floorboards moaned under their feet. Kate felt a shiver run down her spine as they made their way through the dusty halls. They entered a room that had an old fireplace with its ashes scattered on the floor. In the corner of the room, they saw a shadowy figure moving. They all froze, fear taking over their bodies. Then they heard a voice, a low and menacing voice, "Who dares to disturb my sleep?" It was then that they realized that they had made a grave mistake. They had stumbled upon the witching hour, the time when supernatural forces were at their most powerful. The shadowy figure slowly approached them, and they could see that it was a woman, a witch with a twisted and deformed face. She was wearing a tattered cloak, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. She raised her hand, and they could feel a force pushing them back, as if trying to force them out of the mansion. But they stood their ground, and John, the bravest of the group, spoke up, "Who are you? What do you want from us?" The witch let out a chilling cackle. "I am the mistress of this mansion, and you have trespassed on my territory. I demand that you leave at once or suffer the consequences." But the group refused to leave. They were determined to uncover the secrets of the mansion, and the witch was not going to stop them. The witch let out a guttural growl, and the room went dark. They could hear her chanting a spell, and suddenly they were surrounded by a thick fog. The fog was so thick that they couldn't see each other, let alone the witch. As they stumbled blindly through the fog, they could hear strange sounds all around them. The sound of ghostly whispers, the screeching of bats, and the cawing of crows. They could feel something brushing past them, and they knew that they were not alone. Suddenly the fog cleared, and they found themselves in a room with a pentagram drawn on the floor. The witch was nowhere to be seen, but they could feel her presence all around them. They realized that they had stumbled upon the witch's lair. They saw a book lying on a table, and they knew that it was the key to breaking the curse on the mansion. But as they reached out to grab the book, they heard a voice that sent chills down their spines. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." They turned around and saw the witch towering over them. She let out a maniacal laugh. "You should have listened to me when I told you to leave. Now you will suffer the consequences of your curiosity." With a flick of her wrist, she sent them flying across the room, their bodies crashing against the walls. They could feel their bones breaking, and their vision began to blur. They could hear the witch chanting a spell, and they knew that they were doomed. But then something strange happened. They heard a sound that sounded like the ringing of a bell. The group continued to walk, following the path deeper into the woods. As they went, the atmosphere around them seemed to grow darker and more foreboding. The trees became twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Eventually, they reached a clearing where a large, old tree stood. Its trunk was wider than any of them could have wrapped their arms around, and its branches spread out like a canopy overhead. The tree seemed to hum with an eerie energy, and the air around it crackled with magic. As they approached, the group noticed a small, dark figure sitting at the base of the tree. It was an old woman with long, tangled hair and a tattered cloak. She appeared to be muttering to herself, but the group couldn't make out what she was saying. As they drew closer, the old woman looked up at them with piercing, milky eyes. "You should not be here," she croaked, her voice like rusted metal. Ignoring her warning, the group pressed on, their curiosity getting the best of them. As they passed by the woman, they saw that she was holding a small, intricately carved box. It looked ancient, with symbols etched into the wood that they couldn't recognize. Suddenly, the old woman's muttering grew louder, and the box in her hand began to vibrate. The group stopped in their tracks, unsure of what was happening. Without warning, the box exploded in a burst of dark energy, and the woman let out a blood-curdling scream. In an instant, the group was surrounded by a thick fog that obscured their vision. As the fog cleared, they found themselves standing in a different part of the woods with no memory of how they got there. The only thing they could recall was the old woman's warning: the witching hour is not to be trifled with.